Stay tuned, kids. Death is fun. God, I'm glad we only have 2 parents. Holy It felt so painful. And that's, we're talking about grief. I experienced it in a different way in that moment. Like, I'm gonna have to let go of this guy while he's still here.
Did you?
Yeah, I did. The other thing that my brother-in-law Steve did that was a gift towards the end was he said we were talking with the end of life counselors, which, I mean, we've got to learn some finesse. We've got to learn some fucking communication skills. We got to fucking care. If you're dealing with a family in a room in this shitty lighting in a hospital that smells like piss and vinegar and terrible peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, why are we feeding our people peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and meat that my cousin once said, and I'll never forget, when her father was on his deathbed dying, they brought in a piece of meat. She said, that is not meat, that's a monkey paw. That's what we're fucking serving our sick people. We're in the room dealing with the end-of-life counselors, and my brother-in-law gave us a gift. And he said, after dealing with that whole moment, actually we were back home, and he said, after we were mentally absorbing the day and talking with the end-of-life counselors and what the process was, he said, you might want to tell your dad it's okay to go. Because people hang on. Our will is so strong. And we've seen it. I'm sure you've seen it. Miraculous things have happened to people who are given death sentences, where they fight through and they defy the odds, they defy the doctors, they defy the statistics, and they pull through. And that's where people say it's God. That's where people say it's whatever it is, doesn't fucking matter. It's a real experience. And I think on the other side of the coin, people hang on for their family, where they know they need to go, but they hang on because there's unsaid things that need to be said, and there's people that they need to see, and whatever it is. So when we were home, my brother-in-law was like, you guys might want to verbalize that to him. Let him know that he can go, because we know how this is going to end. And a day later or so, we went to the hospital where it was, I think they call it, is it hospice? No, he wasn't at hospice. He had been brought in because he'd gotten more progressed. The memory care facility was in over their heads. They couldn't take care of him because he had started throwing fecal matter at his roommate. And I was like, well, what did the roommate say? It's
2 sides to a coin.
2 sides to a coin. Unfortunately, only one side to poo. And that's unfortunate. And we are sorry. But what did the guy say? And it turns out that the dude took my dad's hat.
That's a big deal for me.
Shat for hat is all I got to say.
That's the name of your new charity?
That was another phone call I got. You got to come home, Dad threw poop. I'm like, oh my God.
Oh, man.
I'm like, I have an Amazon delivery that day. I can't. I think FedEx is showing up. I have a really important new toothbrush that's coming in.
Damn.
But, we were in the hospital where he was brought after the memory care facility said they couldn't take care of him, and where we met with the end-of-life counselors, and all my sisters were there. And I said to him that he could go. And I should say, before I say that to him, it was around his birthday. His birthday was, I think it might have been his birthday, September 30th, because it was like around the time frame from his birthday to, when he died. It was around that time. My sister Chris had gotten him a fart card. We always would get fart cards for our birthdays.
Make noise?
Yeah, that you open them up and they're like...
Oh, I love those.
They're the greatest.
Fantastic.
And it was like, I remember it was, I think we might still have it. It was a picture of like a cabin at night, and you open it up and it's like crickets and bullfrogs, and then you hear...
Genius. It's right up my alley. It really is. It's like you're a family member. It's bizarre.
And at that point, my father had lost the ability to like verbally communicate with us or verbalize. He had almost practically lost the ability to even communicate with his eyes, his touch. He was really slipping at that point. But you open that fart card and boy, would it send him into giggles.
It's music.
Right. It is. It's
Sound.
a butt trumpet.
Yeah.
That's what he played. That was the only instrument he played was the butt trumpet.
Hey, we all got our gifts, you know? Who am I?
So we were grateful for fart cards. They brought my dad back. I always say Frank and farts brought my dad back. Frank Sinatra and fart cards.
It's kind of similar to my dad, not going to lie.
And so, you know, that was just where his state of mind was. He wasn't connecting with us. So I say that because it's important to have that correlation, because when my sister, Chris, Karen, Emily, and I were sitting around him, my mother was also there. I said to him that we loved him, that he was an amazing dad, that we were okay, we were loved, that he could go. And he started to cry. And that's where I was just like, wait, maybe he shouldn't go. He's there. Like, so that's where there's such an emotional tug and pull.
Are you clinging on the fact that you might get the lucidity?
Yes.
And there's moments.
And like, maybe we're fucking up. Maybe there is hope. Maybe he will come back. And I think he needed to hear it. He needed to hear that because he was gone weeks later. And there's so many magical things that happened. I made friends that I never saw coming. I lost friends that I never ever thought I would. And people showed up in ways. That's the thing about grief. It changes people. It changes every fiber of your being. It changes how you step out in the world. And I think it should. It's a very profound experience. I think it's one of the most profound experiences in life, because from the moment we're born, we're experiencing. We are living, we're growing, we are evolving, but death is the one experience we can't personally experience ourselves. When we die, we don't experience that. Our loved ones do. So death is an experience that other people have in relation to whoever died. Do you understand what I'm saying?
For sure.
And that's why I think it's the most profound experience that we don't have. It's the biggest mystery of life besides where we come from, depending on what your beliefs are. And I think that I chose to look at the positive. Maybe that's a pathology, but it's just how I've been my whole life, how I've survived. Maybe it's a survival mechanism. But this comedian who I knew of but never met, John Heffron, had sent me a message on Instagram because I was very public about my father's experience. That was the only other way I could not feel alone, because I was in LA, my family was in Syracuse, and there's so many things I would have done differently. I kind of wish I just stayed home, but I didn't know what we were dealing with, and I was hopeful and going back and forth across the country for a year, booking gigs near them so I could work and make some money and go back home, and doing this triangle of sadness, like that movie, just traveling in this circle of hope and despair. There's still miraculous things that happened and people who showed up in ways that I will forever be indebted to. And John Heffron was one of them. And, you know, he sent me a message because his mother had, I think she had Alzheimer's or maybe some sort of neurodegenerative, Parkinson's or something like that, where it is imminent that they will die. It is, you know, a death sentence and there's no cure. He said, you know, I see you are spending time with him and I want you to know that when you're with him, even though he can't communicate with you, he can hear. He can still hear you, because hearing is one of the last senses they believe to go towards the end. When you're going, that they can still hear, people can still hear, and that's why it's important to talk to your loved ones when you're with them. And if you think they're not responding to you, there's a part of them that is still absorbing and feeling and hearing. Mm-hmm. So he said that, and it resonated with me, and I wrote on my mirror, "Call your dad," in lipstick after that message. And my dad at this point had been moved from that hospital with the end-of-life counselors to hospice, to where people go to die. And boy, that's a one of the saddest places. Why has everything got to be gray?
Yeah.
Why do we got to paint the death halls gray? Why are we painting the place where people go for their forever nap the saddest fucking colors? Why isn't there a fucking marching band or a harp player or, flowers painted on the fucking wall? How hard is it to paint a flower?
Even just colors.
Colors.
Yeah.
It's all so backwards, the way we deal with death and the way we deal with our elderly people. And it's all so dismissive and feels like just we're throwing it, just being completely careless. But that message, I'd read it and I'd want to call the girl at the desk who was a nurse. And she said, anytime you guys want to call, just call me and I'll, go into the room with him or whatever. And I was always so scared because he wouldn't respond. I knew he wouldn't respond. I never, actually, I don't think I ever called until one night, but he couldn't respond. He wasn't talking at that point. And I had gone in to visit him when he was in there, and we put pictures up of us around him and tried to show face and show that we weren't going to accept bare minimum treatment, tried to make friends with the nurses and know names and remember names and all of that. We still were holding on to the fact that this guy was going to be out playing 9 holes the next day. God damn. Hope is exhausting.
Hope is exhausting. What do you do? I mean, what are you supposed to do?
What are you supposed to do?
What are you supposed to do?
There was something odd that happened that has stuck with me. My father, to not be too descriptive or in no way trying to exploit what happened to him or how death takes over. We know about the death rattle, that noise that is just gets into your bones. It's
scary.
It's so scary.
I haven't heard it in person, but I had a couple hospice nurses on here discuss it, and I listened to it. It's hard. It's very hard. It feels unhuman. It just feels unhuman. Yet it's so human.
It's like, oh, now what are you, a singer? Like all of a sudden you're just, what are you, recording a track? Is this like a new rap mumble? What is this?
I think he's trying to say the Sinatra lyrics that, what are you, riding high in April, shot down in May? Is that what he's trying to say?
Is this a new Sinatra rap track? This is trash. So along with the death rattle, sometimes there is an aroma. And for a couple days being there, I'm like, what? There's something in this room. I was so oblivious to death. I'd never been around it. It was the first time I had a front row seat to the stages of death and someone dying. The smell was indescribable and something I couldn't locate. And then like on the third day, I was like, it's my dad. And he smelled like aging wine.
Huh.
Smelled like aging red wine. And it kind of fucked me up because it's my favorite drink.
Is it still?
It is. But there are times when I will get that aroma and I'm brought right back because smell is one of the strongest things linked to memory besides music. And then this other really amazing thing happened. This company, Charlotte's Web, the Stanley Brothers CBD company. Are you familiar with it?
Oh, no, I was thinking you're going the other way. The
book?
Yeah, I was like, okay, let's see where this goes.
Well, these brothers were growers, marijuana growers, that had a weak strain, which was a CBD strain, I believe. I'm probably chopping up the story a little bit. But they found that it was effective and efficacious for people who had epileptic seizures. And it's named after this girl who they helped, this young girl who I think had grand mal seizures, like 1 to 200 a day. This young girl, little girl, this woman's daughter. I think she might have been, I don't know, maybe double digits, 10, if that. They found that the CBD strain, which is non-psychoactive, we know CBD and THC and all the different types in between, when applied and given to her, I think pretty much really eradicated a majority of those seizures. So they created Charlotte's Web, and it's a great brand. Incredible company. And they reached out to me, and they sent me product, and they said, this is for you and your family to enjoy, and hopefully it brings you some peace. And that's why I say, like, people reach out and you never know who's going to show up and how they're going to show up. And so I snuck the CBD into the hospital because it wasn't legal at the time. And my father also, the stages of death, they start to get tight. Everything starts to get very rigid and they're stiff. And he just had a constant grimace on his face. It's like, well, fuck, just fucking go, bro. What are you hanging on for? You trying to be like the Muhammad Ali of death? How many rounds are we going? Golly, you're just...
I'm assuming this is before you had a thought of saying anything to him?
This was after we had said, you can go. And I guess I should have told him a little quicker. Because this guy's taking his damn time. He's strolling out the door. Aww. You know that friend who's just there hanging out? Like, well, I'll see you later. And then they start another conversation.
Yeah.
You're like, we gotta cut this short. Because there's so many things I need to do today. I have to cry.
Yeah.
And then after that needs food, and then I need to cry more.
All of a sudden, one of the insensitive ones saying, go already.
Yeah. So this was my dad's idea of going. But he had gotten really tense and rigid, and he had this permanent grimace on his face. And I snuck the vial of CBD. And with the grace of my sister and my mother, I said, can I give him some? You know, at that point, we could have given him heroin and it would have been fine, which I think should be available end of life.
You should have a whole smorgasbord of options there.
EOL smorgasbord?
Yeah.
Yes. Strap it up. Stick it between my toe.
Seriously, I'm in.
I'm going for the full, I want the Ozzy. What did Ozzy Osbourne have for breakfast?
Bats. I don't know. Yeah. Bats loaded up with heroin.
Yeah, heroin bats. That's how I want to go out.
I'm in. I'll sign off on that now. For real.
So I'm like, is CBD okay? So I give him some drops of CBD, and my sister and I are just standing over him. And I literally, physically saw the effects of CBD happen in real time. I saw him decompress. My sister and I both were looking at him. It was almost like a like Macy's Day Parade balloon deflating.
Wow.
And we could literally see him relax. His grimace went away. His hands relaxed. His breathing was regulated. And I'm pretty sure I started to cry. And my sister and I were just like, oh my God.
That's incredible.
He's back. We're like, oh, he's back. Hey, guys, we went out in the hall. We're going to get out. We're going to go to Green Lakes and do a tight 9. We're gonna wrap this, wrapping it up. Joey P's back.
Joey P.
So
I love it.
There's all these wild things.
It's a roller coaster ride of
yeah.
just ebbs and flows of what's coming next. How do you feel? What to do?
Right. And then back to the John Heffron of it all. I had flown back home after that to LA and saw Call Your Dad and lipstick on my mirror. For a couple days, I just thought about it and couldn't, because I just thought about his smell and how rigid he was in the room, and I felt so scared, and I knew he wasn't going to be able to talk to me. And there was this one Sunday where I had a panic attack on the phone with my sister. We were FaceTiming, and I was walking from my apartment to Ralph's, and my panic attack started on the walk. And I told her, I said, Dad's going to die. You got to go and see him. He's going to die. Like I can feel it. I can feel him leaving Earth. Like it's happening. And I was in a panic attack for probably half an hour. And I had only started experiencing panic attacks around this time with my father. When I finally came to, I went to bed that night and was exhausted. And I just made sure I told my sister, I'm like, you need to go see him and say goodbye. And I said, I don't know why I know this. I just know it. I can feel it. It's happening. And so I think the next Monday, I went to sleep that Sunday, and I woke up. I went to bed really late. And right before I went to bed, I called the hospital. It was the first time I ever called, because that fucking note kept hitting me in the face every time I went to the bathroom. And I called, and the night nurse, or I think her name was Carol. What was her name? I think her name was Carol or Karen. And I said, Karen, this is Joe's daughter. Can you just go whisper in his ear that I love him and I'm thinking about him and I love him so much and I miss him? And she said, yeah, I can go. I'll go do that right now on my rounds. And I hang up with her and I fall asleep. And my sister had called me, I think within an hour later, and he had died.
Wow.
He died after that. And most people don't get that kind of closure. Most people don't have that know-with-all to even consider it, because the process of grief is so strong and overwhelming and all-consuming that you don't think of those things until fucking afterwards. And then people are killing themselves while they're alive with the what-ifs and the regrets and the guilt and what they could have done, what they shoulda, coulda, woulda. The shoulda, coulda, wouldas in grief are so brutal. And all the gifts and the people who showed up for me provided me with so many opportunities to say what most people don't think or have the capacity to say. And I'm like eternally grateful for strangers. I never met John Heffron.
Really?
Never met him. He changed my life. He gave me the greatest gift. And, he allowed me like some grace in the grieving process and some strength and bravery.
I think that's the importance of this conversation. People are going to have to meet you to pull something from this,
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the beauty of everything you just said. And, I know you got a heart out, so I want to be respectful. Maybe there'll be a part 2, but I do want to ask you, this might be a multi-part question. How are you today? Because it's been, 5 years?
Yeah, it's been 5 years.
And what was, I'm sure there's a million things, but and you mentioned, there's no, the stages of grief, whatever, are not linear. Was there any emotion that was most prominent in the grief process for you? Or did you feel like your process of everything you just explained kind of diffused it in a way where you were able to handle it a little better because it was anticipatory and you had this closure?
I think the most consuming emotion associated with grief that I didn't even know I was drowning in was depression. Had no idea that I was depressed until after my mother died. And that's a whole other conversation. We can definitely do a part 2. Hey, part 2. Mom's dead too. Stay tuned, kids. Death is fun. God, I'm glad we only have 2 parents. Holy shit.
Well, yeah, imagine you're a Mormon.
Yeah, what did they do when the village literally raised the kid? That must have been brutal for the kid. How many of these fuckers are going to die?